If this isn't your first time watching our show, we appreciate your viewership. However, watching is not enough. Unfortunately, we also have to put these methods into practice. Today, we are going to show you 3 methods that are very focused and very dialed in for aspects of tuning that are repeatable and will help you train your ear, train your tuning, and help you get the sound you're after as fast as possible. First, we're going to talk about clearing a head on a drum, specifically at a very low tuning. For the most part, we spend a lot of time with snare drums that are tuned in the mid to high range because frankly, that's used for a lot of kinds of music. It's a bit more challenging to get a head clear on a snare drum at a very low tension, and today we're going to walk you through it. If you haven't seen the previous episode from last week about ear training specifically, you're going to want to go back and watch that because we're going to be referencing a little bit of what we talked about in that episode today. No matter where your drum is currently tuned, the first thing we're going to do is release all of the tension from the batter head all the way. Next, we're going to bring that batter head to finger tight. Just a reminder of what that means. We're using our fingers to tighten the tension rods as tight as we can get them without utilizing a drum key. Next, you're going to want to have 2 drum keys if at all possible because we want to tighten this head in a circular pattern on opposite lugs at the same time. Next, we're going to place our finger in the center of the head and use our other hand to tap around each of the lug locations to check out what pitches are happening there. The next step in the clearing is to find the ones that are the lowest out of all of them and raise them up to match what we perceive as highest. The goal here is not to raise the tension of the head to a particular pitch. This is purely just getting each of the lugs to be at the same tension and pitch as the rest. No matter what tension we're at, but particularly in these very low tensions, we want to check in with opposing lugs because oftentimes opposing lugs will actually have the same pitch and be outliers, higher or lower. It's less common for a single lug to be wildly out. At this point, don't tune your drum up to playing tension and get off to the races. Take all of that tension off again and do this exercise again. Do it over and over and over again until it becomes easy, because it will, just like paradiddles or anything else we've practiced on the kit. On to chapter 2. We're going to practice clearing a head in a normal mid to mid-high playing range. Anytime we sit down at a drum that's unfamiliar to us or perhaps belongs to another performer, this is a great way to just take a moment, get some practice in, and also to just check in and make sure that the drum is in tune with itself regardless of what range you're in. In this case, we're not going to change the overall tension of the head because ultimately we want to remain somewhere close to where we are with the overall pitch of the drum. The methodology is similar here in that we want to test the pitch of each of the lugs with our finger at the center of the head to alleviate some of the fundamental and make those pitches stand out more. As we're checking each of the lug locations on this head, we're discovering that there are some that are high, there are some that are low, and as we change each of them as they are identified, there are going to be micro changes to the rest of the head because every single tension rod is affecting the entire head at least a little bit. This means that it's not enough to just pitch up the 2 that sounded like they were low and call it a day. We have to check around all of them as we go. This is a perfect time to remind everyone to keep your adjustments as small as you possibly can because it's better to have to do more repetitions than to overshoot and send you off in another direction of wildly out-tuning. If you're feeling like the pitch of the head is sounding pretty good, go ahead and give it a strike at the edge and listen to see if you hear any overall wobble in that head. This method will work for any medium tuned snare, and if you get to the point where it's in tune with itself and you want to practice more, go ahead and raise or lower some tension on random lugs, and then repeat the process again. Compared to the first example, this falls into a much more common everyday scenario. Maybe you're going to a rehearsal space that has someone else's drums in it, or you're going to a music store and checking out a new snare drum that isn't necessarily in tune with itself, and you're trying to figure out if you like it. It's pretty hard to tell when they're wildly out of tune. Every single instance that we run into this problem and take this method to clear the head, we're practicing, we're training our ears, we're training our hands, and getting better at this. Now for chapter 3, let's consider the idea that our snare drum is already in tune with itself and it's sounding great. The exercise here is to move the range that the drum is tuned in and then make sure that we can get the head cleared at that point. So let's get our 2 drum keys, and first thing, put them on opposing lugs and raise the tension on those lugs just the smallest possible amount. Next, let's repeat that action for all the rest of the opposing pairs and try to do exactly the same amount that you did with the first pair. It may seem like all of these should now be at the same pitch, but upon checking, it turns out that they're not. Anytime we change the range of the batter head on the drum, or really any other head on our drum set, we must check and make sure that they've actually moved in pitch to the degree that we think and that there aren't any outliers. At this point now, we're going to follow the same process from the previous chapters and take our time identifying the lower pitched lugs and bring them up to match the higher and effectively clear the head. Now, if we strike the head at the edge, we're going to hear a very clear pitch without any wobble. The great thing about this particular exercise is you can continue. You can decide that you're done at this point and start going back downward, or you can continue tuning upward. The whole thing being that we want to get it a little bit out of tune with itself and then bring it back. And over the course of each of these chapters, we're moving through a pretty wide range, which is going to be an even better way to train our ears than staying in a narrow one. If this is starting to feel easy for you, or if this feels like something that you've spent some time with already, there are myriad ways that we can make these challenges even more challenging. For instance, we don't have toms on the kit right now. If we had toms up and there was a bunch of crosstalk going on while we were tuning, that would start to make it a bit trickier. Or maybe put some music on. Distract yourself in some kind of way. Take your drum in the living room where there's people running around. Whatever it might be, start to get into the idea that we are not always going to be in a perfectly sterile environment when we deal with these things, and anything we can do to make it a little bit trickier is going to make the results better. Of course, also, it bears repeating that you can do this with any drum on your kit, and the ranges are all going to feel really different. Never mind how it might feel on a floor tom, which is physically larger. It's all going to be a little bit of a different challenge, and any clearing that we do at any range is going to make us better at tuning. Now, before you hit that like button and completely forget that we talked about any of this because it feels like a lot of work, remember that practice is not about big chunks once in a while. It's about maybe 5 minutes a day. Regularity is what's going to get you an improvement, and even something as small as 5 minutes a day is going to get you results faster than you could possibly imagine.